A teaching, a practice, a community that's been alive now for 2,600 years. That's quite something to be part of, you know. So this is also a broadcast of the Portland Insight Meditation Community, which you can find online at portlandinsight.org. And you can find my website at robertbeatty.com, both of which have a lot of useful information. How are you this morning? Who did you discover when you woke up? I had one of those very challenging nights. I forgot to take my restless leg medicine, which I'd have to take 2 hours before bed. And so about 1 o'clock, I was just feeling awful. And then I remembered that I'd forgotten. I was driving the car when my little alarm went off, and so it was. It's very unpleasant. A great opportunity to watch the feeling foundation of mindfulness, the pleasant and unpleasant. So a poem for the moment by Ellen Bass. The thing is to love life. To love it even when you have no stomach for it, and everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs. When grief weights you like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief. You think, how can a body withstand this? Then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes, and you say, yes. Yes, I will take you. I will love you again. The thing is to love life, to love it even when you have no stomach for it. And everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs. When grief weighs on you like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief. You think, how can a body withstand this? Then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes, and you say, yes, yes, I will take you. I will love you again. I aspire to love and accept myself exactly as I am in this moment. I don't need that. I take refuge in being awake, in being mindful. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. take refuge in the way things are. I take refuge in the Sangha, in the community of practice. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya. The sun is being very dependable this morning, rising right on time. And so do we, rising early enough to make our way through whatever was necessary to get here this morning. Let us turn on the gratitude tap. Let us prime that pump. Grateful for breathing, for walking, for hearing and seeing and smelling. Grateful for friendships, for vaccinations. Grateful for the Dharma. And let us clarify our intention. The intention to be here in the present moment, using the body and mindfulness of breathing in and out as our anchor and home base. And willing to experience and be alive to and with whatever arises. It's a very bold stance. It's a stance in which we put aside preferences a lot. And so we come home and embrace fully the reality of in-breathing and out-breathing. Each breath appears where a moment ago it didn't exist. The beginning leads to a rising to fullness. That vanishes, and then there's fullness. And then that leads to an exhalation and the decrease of the inflation of the lungs, the movement of the chest and abdomen. The same with thoughts, sounds, memories, plans. the various manifestations of the 5 hindrances, noticing with objectivity a mind that's full of desire, subtle or gross, wanting, wanting, wanting. Or a mind that is not wanting, that is disliking, that is striking against its objects. It shouldn't be like this. Or perhaps restless and agitated, filled with grief perhaps, or remorse, or worry. Or perhaps there's sleepy dullness, sloth and torpor. And we can watch how the self, the experience of the self, disappears time and again. Or perhaps there's doubt. We are captured or entranced or enveloped by very convincing wandering minds. They present themselves as real, and they are as real as dreams. Noticing how in the midst of a wandering mind, there is spontaneously mindfulness. So coming home to in-breathing and out-breathing with no coercion, instead with wisdom, with clear seeing, clear comprehension. knowing this is the practice I'm doing. Inherent in this practice, the truth of impermanence. And I practice not only for stress management and psychological well-being, but also for liberation. I take refuge in the Buddha. Sitting in mindfulness. Cultivating curiosity. Being persistent. And we start to get at least glimpses of ease, of pleasure, of joy that comes from inside. the piti sometimes. There's sensations in the body. The joy of just being alive with nothing to do, nothing to achieve. And it comes with equanimity. Sometimes just for a few moments, but then it grows in time. It grows along with concentration and tranquility. When we start touching into and abiding in these that are the 7 enlightenment factors, it is inevitable that there will be changes in our lives. More contentment, more ease, more capacity to tolerate ambiguity and discomfort. Coming home ever so kindly, mercifully, compassionately, to the breath, to the present moment. We sit and allow the mind to unwind. And there's no predicting. We can, over time, train the mind to be more mindful, more concentrated, to be more forgiving, more merciful. More present, or present more frequently. What we practice, what we rehearse, what we repeat becomes natural, becomes conditioned in. And so let us, before we end this meditation, conjure up some kind, loving thoughts. Perhaps the sacred mantra, I love you, with your name at the end. I love you. Maybe imagine yourself as a small child, maybe as a newly born baby. Still crying, still covered in vernix. Taking your first gasping breath. I love you. Welcome to Earth. Make it clear to yourself that you will be here through all the milestones, through crawling and walking and bicycling and learning to read and write and going through the horrors of middle school and puberty. I love you. with your name at the end. Don't hesitate to be extraordinarily loving, generous, kind. And if there is any time in your life where you were really starving for love, starving for caring and attention, let yourself think of that time and be there now. And maybe pour in some loving kindness phrases like, may I be deeply happy. May I live with ease and with grace. May I not be identified with fear and danger, self-criticism. May I be liberated, one moment at a time, free from identification with the neurotic, wounded self. I love you with your name at the end. And why not? When you're driving, be filled with love for yourself. Love including all the rough edges, the places where you've been less than perfect, even the places where you've betrayed your values, where you've been really less than perfect. And think up, create your own beautiful reference words like, may my life become one great sigh of gratitude. Lavish kindness and generosity on yourself. May I discover that this moment of awakeness is freedom. And I love you with your name at the end. May I be happy. May I be free from fear and danger. May I live with ease and grace, and may I be liberated. Dropping down, dropping fully into the body, noticing its contact with the floor, with the cushion, with the chair. Be here. This is the moment of life. Can we dare to embrace life again? And we might creatively, on the in-breath, wish ourselves well. And then on the out-breath, pick a loved one, wish them well. And think of another person, a friend, a relative, Let their face come up in the mind and surround them with light and love. This may well affect them at a distance, but we know for certain it affects us. We plant seeds of love and compassion and kindness, which then grow and overtake the seeds of fear and jealousy and loneliness and contraction. And please now, bringing awareness into the body, into the hands, into the forearms, into the shoulders and throat and neck, to the jaw and the cheeks, the eyes, and holding a thought of love, a thought of compassion. Please let us allow our eyes to open and see. Seeing. Seeing. And let us see beyond the first impressions. This is the meditation of relationship, the meditation of observing what's happening inside as the sense doors contact their objects. I had a marvelous first therapist. He's still alive. He's 94. Don Nickerson, poet, writer, therapist. Amazing, complex man. He became a great mentor to me. He said I should start a private practice based in meditation, and I did. He also told me that when talking to people, don't try to make eye contact all the time. Make heart contact all the time. Really pay attention from the heart. Check in with the eyes sometimes, but it was funny because in social work school, I'd been in practice for at least a decade, and I was so insecure and narcissistic, but in one of the practice classes, the teacher, who was younger than me, came up to me, and I was talking with a friend, and we were doing a practice counseling session, and I was connected with this person. She was talking about divorcing her husband, and the teacher came up and corrected me and said, "Robert, you should be making eye contact." And I heard come out of my mouth, "Oh dear, you've got to be kidding." Oh dear. But it's true. And Ruth, on my first retreat, first time I was teaching a weekend retreat, I was terrified. And I called Ruth, and she said, "Darling, just remember your sitting bones. Pay attention to your sitting bones, and everything will be fine." And that's true too. Just be here. So I'd like to invite you to share anything that's up for you this morning in your heart. Jim, would you give me a sound check? I'm not sure that the sound is on here.
You're muted, Robert.
How long have I been muted?
A long time.
How funny. How funny.
I've heard you the entire time, Robert.
You've heard what?
I've heard you speak the entire time. I think it's Kat's problem.
No, it seems not. Because I was muted. How funny. Oh, it was brilliant. It was the great secret Dharma. Anyone who heard it was completely awakened on the spot. Oh, dear. Well. Huh.
The last I heard, you were quoting Ruth. Just remember your stick bones.
Oh, well, that wasn't so bad then. It turned off itself. It's well, then I'm going to call it. That was the secret teaching. There it was. So how about you?
I'm enlightened now.
That's very funny.
I'll share a little. It's Kat.
Hello, Kat.
Hi. I want to talk a little bit this morning about smart feet, which is coming back to the cushion or let's be real, the couch, even when meditation is feeling like a steaming pile of garbage. And it just feels like such a miracle. It's been a few weeks of pretty much every day meditation feeling like having a ton of doubt and why am I doing this? And I just thinking the whole time, like having 45 minutes to be stuck alone with my brain. And coming anyway, which is very unusual for me. Normally it would have been a few days of that and been gone. And I'm very grateful, Robert, for your telling me to use a mala. It's been very helpful. And also grateful that you are all here every day. You all come every day, even on the days where I might take a day. It's so wonderful to always come back here. And it's lifted. That feeling has lifted and it's gone back to like, oh, this is not an excruciatingly painful 45 minutes. I might not be enlightened right now, but I'm feeling much more connected to the practice. And I wanted to share a little joy story with that. With my kids over the weekend, we had a cleanup challenge to clean the whole house in an hour and a half. Let's see if we could all work together and clean up. And of course, my kids were like, okay, cool, let's do it. And then they were sitting on the couch with a book while I was cleaning. It's like, oh, okay. And so finally, after like 5 times, like, okay, you need to go clean your room. I was like, it's time for you to clean your room. And my 5-year-old looked at me and goes, gosh, Mom, did you even meditate today? And I obviously didn't say this because he's 5, but I'm like, actually, I did. So I'm just an asshole. Like, it was just, a fantastic moment. So I'm glad that it's how they are growing up and evolving. So thank you all.
this is Bern.
Hi, Bern.
Thank you so much for sharing your life and your kids with us. It's delightful, and it reminds me of when my kid was little and the insanity of it all. So thank you so much.
Mm.
Hello, Robert. It's Tanya here.
Hello, Tanya there.
Put my camera. So, I just want to ask you a bit more on attachment.
Mm.
So, I kind of feel like obviously you need to do your practice. All you have to do truly is die, but it's good to do a practice, and that brings so much more awareness of your actions
Mm-hmm.
and the forms of attachment that you're making, or how you're making these attachments in life. Because it seems in a way that we're sort of making a choice with how we become attached to things. And I guess making a choice on how much you want to discover self, how much you really want to discover that space that has no attachment. So I just want to ask you in that way, because sometimes I feel like, we know that we're making maybe unhealthy attachments, but we don't want to acknowledge it. And yeah, because I find my whole life is about kind of releasing these attachments, and that for me is the practice all the time. But sometimes I don't need to make them.
Hmm.
Like, as if, even a monk, like they're saying, okay, I'm not going to create all these attachments, so I don't have to work on that part. Maybe I'm just going to work more on past karma or so on.
Was there a question in there?
Yeah, I was hoping you could maybe kind of find it. I guess just as a teacher, you're taking the witnessing position. So those spaces come, in meditation, where it's complete stillness and peaceful. But I find throughout the day, maybe I made different sorts of attachments, and then I have to clear those. Yes, you can witness them, understand life is also suffering, but sometimes are we creating so much more unnecessary suffering due to ignorance?
Mm. I just had a thought.
Okay.
You prompted something. Have you done the Goenka 10-day courses?
I did do Vipassana.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I did do in Nepal one time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why I thought of that is there's a lot of emphasis in that teaching about not creating sankharas, not creating conditioning. And one of the unfortunate things that comes from it is that there's then a strong conditioning to not make conditioning. And there's a strong aversion to engaging fully in life because, it's going to mean that I'm creating attachments. And I think that where my mind goes with it right now is that the very act of stopping to sit and really paying attention to things arising and passing away, and also really attending to the suffering that's caused when the mind is demanding that anything be different than it is. That's the work of freeing ourselves from clinging. I'm always hesitant to use the word attachment, because with all my psychological training, so many of us need to learn how to attach. We need to learn how to form a positive, powerful attachment to other human beings. And I just had a rush of gratitude. I've had several therapists with whom I was in relationship, for two of them, for more than 10 years. And I grew to love them, and they grew to love me. And we really, I learned that it was safe and important to actually be vulnerable and open and loving with another person. And so there's a way that the Buddhist teachings are often misunderstood as not really connecting and not attaching to someone else. And there is a price. When we attach, there will be grief. But of all the, it's worth, in my observation, it's worth the price. And monks are not without their attachments. They become very attached. I've heard one fellow who was a monk for a long time say, one can get pretty attached to one's bowl because it's a nice bowl, and you waited a long time to get that bowl, and you couldn't ask for it, and had to be given, and then it somehow got mixed up. They all get washed. The lay people come in and then take the bowls and wash them, and it's like my bowl didn't come back. And so we're all working with that. And life in the monastery is life. There's jealousies and all kinds. It's life. But I wanted to come back to this, and perhaps it's not even what you're asking about. But this particular training is rooted in the Four Noble Truths, the Four Ennobling Truths. That as we embrace them and really get it, we become much kinder and more loving and more noble. So the first truth, of course, is that there's suffering. There really is, and there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of disappointment, and life is really hard. And it's not supposed to be. The advertising shows us that it shouldn't be, but ask the people in Texas who still have no water if it's hard, and it's hard. Ask the single mothers in so many places in the world. And so if we dare and we're willing to experience the difficulty and not stay lost in projections and fantasies, then we have an opportunity to observe the second ennobling truth, which is, why am I suffering? And that's where we find that the mind is attached, clinging to, there should be more pleasure, or there should be less pain. Or this moment kind of sucks. I want to be in that moment in the future, the becoming. And so our suffering comes from the clinging to, this should be like this, that shouldn't be like that. And that's the place where one really gets to illuminate the process of clinging. And then there are the moments when the clinging stops. And those are the moments of nirvana, of liberation, of the cooling of the fires of greed, which are greed and hatred. And so it's right there that we suffer and become aware of the process of clinging. And it's not intellectual at all. It's really just observing, wow, look how much I'm suffering. And why? It's, well, I don't like this. Or I want more of that. So I think that's what that prompted. I'm not sure if that spoke to what you were asking. I hope so.
Yes, it does. It does, especially, with I want more of that. But I find the trick is that when you take suffering compared to bliss, how can you not, cling to that bliss? I know it's a practice, but it's also very almost sadistic, in that way, because you get just this you awaken, and you, like, I can have experiences with just like a perfection of bliss, and then to take it to the suffering, it's really hard to stay in that suffering, and I think that you have to really understand the purpose of why you have to hang out in the suffering. Otherwise, it's just you're not going to do it. So,
on one of my earlier retreats, I was in a retreat center in California, and it was heavy the first few days. And I was really sad, and my usual codependent relationship breaking up anguish. And then one morning I woke up completely joyful. And I went out in the backyard, and it was a sunny place, San Jose. And I had, of course, my harmonica with me. So I was back in the back end of the garden playing a few blues riffs and really getting into it. And my teacher came up to me and said, "Hi, you must be feeling better today." And I said, "Yeah, I think I've got this now, And he said, "Well, that's wonderful, but you have forgotten that there are other people on retreat." So they didn't particularly want to hear my harmonica playing. But he then suggested, "Well, this is really great. Enjoy it fully. Keep practicing. Keep the schedule sitting and walking, and see how long it lasts." And of course, by 11 o'clock in the morning, it had changed. And I had such grief about it. Because I had thought, well, I've learned to meditate now, and it's all going to be okay. But in fact, what was happening was it was a wave coming through, and then there was the next wave and the next wave. And I was clinging to that. It's like I wanted more of that harmonica kind of mood. And I got it, of course, a day later or 2 days later, and it kept coming through. Can you hear my dog barking? Thank you, my dear, for tuning in, speaking. Ooh, there's sun on the wall. Whenever there's a sunny day, this is the way that this mind creates suffering. There's an image of skiing. And then the thought, why am I not skiing? Every time there's a sunny morning. Now I could create a lot of suffering in that. I could cling to those ideas and repeat them, and then get into, well, how can I do it? Or find fault with my life, or I can notice, there's that pattern. And it's kind of like, well, thank you for sharing, and now I'm here.
Hey, Robert, it's Sky.
Hello, Sky.
Recently, I've noticed that along my journey, I have these memories of things that basically fall under the title of aversion. Something that happened that I didn't like. And then comes this moment of mindfulness of like, oh, that's not happening now. That's in the past. And I'm wondering if perhaps as I continue to train my mind with noticing and awareness, that these moments become markers of awareness to prompt me to go, oh, that's not happening now. Is the brain rewiring itself?
I think the people who are interested in that would say yes. I'm more, my vocabulary is more, and I think it's a good thing they're doing all the brain research they are. And what they're doing is demonstrating what those of us who've meditated a lot have known for a long time, well, for thousands of years, that yes, you can become more empathic if you meditate. And but now we're getting the, quote, science behind it, and that's fine, that's great. But there is I was reminded as you spoke of something that's been happening in this consciousness for 2 or 3 years now. There are in here memories of encounters with people, bullies when I was a kid and things like that, that for a long time, well, early on in therapy, they emerged and there was a lot of Sturm und Drang with them and so on. But anyway, they still arise, and they arise with aversion. It's like, I don't like that person. And that's becoming more and more obvious. It's kind of like you're in a quiet room and someone over here says, remember this, and that it pisses you off, right? Remember? And it's like, well, and there's a certain sense of, well, why bother? That person could easily be dead at this point. And I don't know that it really happened as the mind says it happened either. And why take the life energy to bother? Because it's over, which you said very clearly yourself. It's not here now. And there's really nothing to learn from it. I've done the learning from it. And so I think I shared a couple of times in the last few months that I also, about 2 years ago, maybe 3, probably 5, the way the time goes, but I burned all my old journals because I spent a few moments reading in them and it was like, ew, yuck. And then the thought, do I want my children to read these after I'm dead? Not likely. And it was quite a practice. I built a fire in the backyard, and at first I was doing it page by page, but then that got tedious, and I started burning whole books, and it was quite relieving. That I don't want to go back and read that stuff. This moment is plenty. In fact, I can't. My life is so full with this moment that there's no place. There's no, and I'm not suggesting that's true for everybody, but I found that very relieving.
Yeah, I'm discovering that when those memories come up, there's not as much attachment to them anymore.
Right.
And I'm still kind of milking them for some lesson. I'm like, okay, what did I learn there? And every once in a while, there'll be insightful, like, aha, I get it. And that actually kind of just releases it even more.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm able to just see these moments, just like the cloud that pops up and moves away. Like,
wonderful.
Oh, there it is. Oh, bye.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate you sharing the journal story, because I also had a stack of journals knee high, and there's old crap in there that's just baggage that should just, and not that I want to use the word should, but I could release, by just eliminating them and eliminating my attachment to them. I'm attached to the fact that I wrote them, but not to the content.
Well, I wrote I had some poems in there, and some of them might be good poems, and it's like, there's more good poems emerging right now.
sorry to talk twice in the same group, but this is so powerful as the child of a parent who died and left a bunch of journals.
Oh.
So my dad died very suddenly at 55, and I was 15. And I got several of his journals, and honestly, a lot of them were horrible. They were not very kind to my mother. They had divorced a long time before. They were not very kind to me. And this is such a freeing and beautiful thought of like, oh, maybe those were his private thoughts and were his out. Like I've never thought about it that much until hearing you all talk about it. Like, oh, maybe I wasn't supposed to read them. Like, you know, I was a teenager and I got these journals. I wasn't gonna be like, I'm not gonna have these journals. So it's just like so powerful and beautiful and laughter filled of like, oh, maybe they were like my journals when I write, fuck my kids, I don't like you right now, as a way of not taking it out on them because my journal doesn't have feelings. Like, it's just so liberating. This is so magical to be like, oh, maybe they were just his journals. So good choices, Burning. Excellent, excellent choices.
I love your enthusiasm, Kat. More on journals, if I'm going to be bold, I guess. In my first marriage, was in the 70s, and we both had affairs secretly. And then we worked it through in therapy, and we found ourselves in it was not a great marriage, but it was really quite workable in many ways. And I did a lot of work. We were both very interested in Jungian psychology and psychotherapy, and I used my journal as a way of working out the polarities in myself. The purpose of it was for me to write, and there were several pages in which I was comparing her to the person with whom I had the brief affair. And we had made a deal, we had made an agreement early in the marriage that we would never read each other's journal. That was a firm, was almost part of our marriage vows. And then years later, 10 years later, things were going really rather well. And I came home one day and I met this ice person. And she had read my journal. And the agony of those early years was right there, and I don't think we ever recovered. I think that was really the end of the possibility of closeness between us, because she had read stuff that really wasn't hers to read, and that I didn't even necessarily believe, but I was vomiting it up onto the paper. And since then, anytime I do something like that, it's behind a password or it gets burned, because it can do so much harm. Because especially if one is a consciousness explorer, and you really want to see where is the hatred, where is the jealousy, what happens if I speak the truth of this moment about my kids? That's like, God, why did I ever have kids? And then for the kids to read that, So it's one with the best of intentions, one can cause a lot of harm. But I know where those journals are now. The ash from them went into the garden. Well, anybody else have anything you'd like to share? Oh, and Kat, there isn't a rule about you can only share once. Anybody sitting with anything 8:20, need to go fairly soon.
Hi, Robert. This is Steffi.
Hello, Steffi.
Okay, so this journal discussion has been really helpful, and so some of the journals I have with complaining about some challenging circumstances with a relative. My justification is I keep them to give myself empathy for what I went through. And but it's the same thing. Like, I don't want anyone to come across them, read them, be harmed by them. And I didn't know if you had any comments about that.
Hide them well. I mean, if they're an active part of your self-empathy practice, and they're important for that, then why not do that, but be darn sure that they're really private.
Okay. Well, thank you. Right now, I can tell you they're not private. So that's, so that is good thinking. And I guess what I'm really hoping is that I can outgrow the need for empathy, or not that I can outgrow the empathy, because I'll, need the empathy, but that I can just believe myself and know what happened and not need like the evidence, proof, or whatever.
I hear you, and sometimes when we're emerging out of the clouds of denial, or when we've been in circumstances where there's a lot of gaslighting, and there's an alternate reality. Wow, that's interesting. Wow. When I said that gaslighting thing, I thought of the monster that's loose in America now with all the lying and the alternate reality that millions of people are now caught in a delusion, which is very destructive. And so when we're breaking out of those delusions and stories in our families, and when it's difficult to stay in contact with reality, then a journal could be really helpful. And maybe taking notes about your process could really be helpful. But it does need to be very private, because it can do so much. I mean, I have such a. It was so bad what happened with my journal.
You once made a comment about that you wished that people had these thought bubbles.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the journal is like a thought bubble, just random stuff coming through, and you get it down on paper, and somehow writing it gives it so much more weight, instead of recognizing, oh, that was just them processing something going through. Or myself, when I reread my own stuff, I'm like,
right.
Oh, there I am just processing. So maybe there's a reason why we don't have thought bubbles.
It would be a different world.
It would. Great discussion this morning.
Mm-hmm. Wow, Kathy wrote, after sitting with the decision, I recycled my parents' love letters without reading them. Wow. Well, anything bursting to be spoken? I saw a child there for a little while. I forget where this child was. Any kids in the group? I guess it's just us. Oh, it was Brian's child. That's right, it was. Well, let us, if you wish, unmute and sing each other a beautiful wish. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a lovely mindful day, dear friends. Thanks for coming and warming all of our hearts together.
Morning. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Dharma friends.
Thank you.
Robert,
Yes.
it's Kat. Where do you hold a mullet?
In your-
Do you hold it here or just in your lap? If not, I'm still learning.
Oh, I when I've done it, just relaxed in my lap.
Oh, so don't overcomplicate things?
Yeah. No, you have to really make it work. It has to be here, and yeah, and you should be the fingers of the other hand should be crossed.
I think it might actually work. Thanks, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Bye. Bye, all. Good day.
Goodbye, dear friends. Thanks for being here this morning. Francine, there's life coming to one of those little plants.
Oh, I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
La primavera arrive. Yeah, the spring has arrived. I can't wait to see it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, dear friends on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you for